It takes imagination to change the world that you and I live in. If you only live in a world where you deal with what you can see and touch and taste and feel around you, you're going to lose most of what is and what could be. Imagination is what sees possibilities. It sees the things that can't be seen, that are hidden to sight. When you look at a child, you don't see all that that child can be. You don't see the caring mother that that child can grow into, the teacher that she can be one day. You look at a pile of bricks out on a lot somewhere, you don't see the building. It can house people, provide them with a warm place to live. You look at an empty room, you don't see piles of groceries and shelves of cans that can feed hundreds of people whose paychecks don't stretch far enough. It takes imagination to live in this world. You really can't do life without some imagination, because imagination asks the questions of what it is that might be, what could be, instead of what is, what really should come to be. You know, each of us who are here tonight has done some imagining about this season. You have ideas in your heart and mind of what you would like it to be for you this time. What you want your home to look like, what you want to see under the tree on Christmas morning. Christmas has always been a time for imagining, and that's right for us. But you can't do this thing with God without some imagination. If you're going to be involved with God, it's going to take more than you see every day. It's going to take some wondering. It's going to take some pondering. It's going to take some calm, deep thinking. It's going to take some quiet time of wondering and reflecting, thinking about it. What is this? After all, if you're going to deal with God, you have to recognize that God has a huge imagination. God thought about all the things that are amazing to us. DNA and black holes and ocean currents and stem cells. And God imagines all of that and creates it out of nothing. God has an incredible imagination. You know, years ago when I was studying to be an aircraft mechanic, we used to have a cartoon that we posted in the shop. And it was about an airplane, and it was designed by different groups of people. We used to have a different airplane for each group that designed it. We used to say that if marketing designed this airplane, it would be sleek and have all of these flashing lights on it to attract people's attention. But if a mechanic designed it, it would be boxy and wide with open panels where you could get into it. Everybody designs things with their own interests in mind. When you see something, you can tell about who imagined it and what they wanted to have happen. And so when God does this amazing thing that we're talking about here tonight, when God does this amazing thing about coming into the world, God does it in an imaginative way. The big God of the universe shrunk down, somehow born as a human baby. That's not some clumsy, unimaginative way of doing something. That's not God sending lightning bolts and fire and earthquakes. This is artistic. This is elegant. This is inspiring. God does something that makes you stop and think about it. It takes some imagination to see God in this scene of straw and hay and sheep and smells, everything that goes along with that. And there is God with us. And if you can't imagine that this Christmas season, if you can't somehow bring yourself to reflect on that, to imagine, to think about that, then this baby in the manger thing is not going to be anything more than an odd bit of poor public health policy. A baby in a food bin. Sounds like we should call DIFAS. Call the police. Take the child to the hospital for a checkup. Set a court date for Joseph and Mary. These people should not have a child. Our world is not very imaginative at points. For this to work this Christmas, you have to be able to imagine that God is now among us. And I'm going to ask you this Christmas to imagine something even more than that God has come to be with us. I want you to imagine something else. I want you to imagine that God knows you. I want you to imagine that God knows your name, and God knows your history, and God knows your personality. God knows what you're going to say before you say it. God knows how many hairs are on your head. God knows what your hopes and dreams are, and God knows what your failures have been. I want you to imagine that. And now imagine that this God is still very interested in you and your future and your well-being. As the angel said, he's whack on you. You can imagine that God is interested in you. And that God is creative. And that God is doing something for you in an incredible way. Then you're in the spirit of Christmas. And you're ready for what this is about. If you can imagine that, then you need to do something like the shepherds did. To be amazed like these children did here. To come and gather and to offer their marvel, their wonder, amazed at this child who is God with us. We need to come. We can imagine that. And see here God's gift to us, our Savior. The help that we need to experience God's love. And so imagine Christmas. Imagine God doing something amazing. Imagine yourself becoming part of this. Not just watching them, but being part of the gathering of people and angels who adore and admire and marvel at this incredible thing that God has done. And imagine that changing your life. That you know that God is interested in you and that God has come to be with you. That'll change how you face each day. How you face bad news and good news. What you do with your time and what you do with your family. What you do with your children. What you do with your future. Imagine. Imagine what could be with God in your life. And so there could be another birth this Christmas. Not one 2,000 years ago, but right now, here tonight. This can be a beginning for you to see Christ in a new way. It can be the beginning of a new time when you receive into your life the gift God intends here. It's what God imagines for you. God loved the world that He gave His Son. And God wasn't interested in just adding another holiday to the calendar between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day. God was interested in doing something new in your life. And so this Christmas, can you imagine those things? And can you imagine yourself in the story? God imagines it for you. And so will you take part in God's imagining? We're going to sing together with the worship band, and so I invite you.
This first song that we're doing in this worship set is one that you guys are not real familiar with, but you heard